What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Neighborhood Podcast. One of the hosts of the podcast. My name is Kyle Dabra.
What's going on, everybody? Kevin Valentin here, the other half of the podcast. Kyle, man, what a Sunday.
Yes, sir. It was an action-packed Sunday in the sports world. We had a great game two between the Warriors and the Celtics. We had a great game three between the Lightning and the Rangers in the NHL. We've also got like some big news coming out of Utah in regards to the Jazz with Quinn Snyder residing. Bro, we got to talk about these Angels. Angels have lost 10 straight games. They were 27 and 17 just like 2.5 weeks ago, and they've completely fallen apart. So, bro, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. But you ready to dive into this?
Oh, but of course.
Well, typically I just outline the agenda from here on out, but since I already kind of threw out the topics, let's just dive straight into the first one. And that is the Warriors bouncing back in a pretty significant fashion in game two against the Boston Celtics. Just to kind of give you guys a refresh of what happened before game two. Boston won game one pretty decisively against Golden State. Boston was down double digits in game one. It looked like Golden State was really firing on all cylinders. And then the Celtics had just an absolute dominating shooting performance in the fourth quarter in game one against Golden State that got them that 1-0 series lead. But going to game two, the Warriors showed up and they put a beat down on the Boston Celtics, beating them by the score of 107 to 88. Once again, Steph Curry was on fire, almost had 30 points. Jordan Poole chipped in for 17, hit pretty much the game clinching shot at the end of the third quarter with a dramatic 40-foot bomb at the end of the third quarter, beating the buzzer. It was just an amazing shot by Jordan Poole. It really just kind of encapsulated that major run that Golden State traditionally makes in the third quarter. They're one of the best third quarter teams I've ever seen, and they proved it once again. And as it stands right now, the series is at 1-1 piece in the NBA Finals. The series will transition back to Boston for game three within the next couple days. But let's talk about this game too. So, Kevin, to kick this one to you, just how impressive was Golden State in this game two win over the Boston Celtics?
I mean, I thought it was a great show of how they made adjustments. I thought it was a good glimpse as to how Steve Kerr has this team rallied together, has this team focused and locked in. I mean, they always have that saying, Dub Nation lock in on Twitter. Like Steph Curry tweets that before every game, and I really thought that is kind of a big testament to what they did today, just because they were able to focus on the defensive end. They forced 18 turnovers on the Boston side. And the biggest point, man, the supporting cast for Boston that dominated and kind of led the run in the fourth quarter in game one, they were a no-show today. Marcus Smart only had, I believe, 6 points, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, now my screen wants to freeze. No, he had 2 points. I'm giving him way too much credit. Marcus had two. Al Horford had two. Robert Williams had two. Jaylen Brown shot inefficient from the field with 17. Jason Tatum goes for 28. But, I mean, honestly, outside of Tatum's 28 points, it was really, really a struggle for Boston to kind of get it going from the field today. I mean, as a team, they shot 37.5%. That is absolutely atrocious. It didn't look like the same team from game one. I don't know if they made a deal with the basketball gods and said, you know what, Jason needs to go out there and get his buckets, screw everybody else, or what. But no, it was absolutely incredible. The Warriors were just absolutely honed in on making sure that they held home court to at least some kind of decency. Obviously, they lost the advantage giving up game one, but they didn't want to go, down 0-2, heading back to, Beantown. And I thought that Golden State did a very good job. Steph hit shots. Obviously, like Clay had a very, very, very bad night. And then you go and you look at the supporting cast of the Warriors, and everybody kind of made some contributions. Wiggins had a little bit of an off night, 4-12. He had 11. Looney had 12. Klay Thompson had his 11 points. And then you look at the rest of the bench for the Warriors. Poole, like Kyle said, gives you 17. Gary Payton gives you 7. And, you just kind of look at the team and say, overall, this was a solid performance. But, of course, it could be better. Um, Kyle and I have been talking about this pretty much all postseason, outside of maybe a couple of games. Klay Thompson's got to step it up, man. It's getting to the point where he's putting up shots, just like Mike said a couple of weeks ago. Excuse me. To where you look at it and you say, I don't think they need that shot, or that was kind of forced, or Klay, what the hell are you doing? And I understand that as Klay Thompson, you want to get into a rhythm, you want to shoot yourself out of a slump. Like they always say, shoot or shoot. But Klay Thompson needs to understand that sometimes the betterment of the team is you being that decoy running off of the screen. And like Draymond does so well, the fake handoff, that dribble drive penetration that he gets from the big switching to cover Klay or to double him to try to close out. Draymond's got a direct lane to the basket, and usually someone's got to step up and close the weak side. Someone's going to be open in the corner, and usually that help pass skips over, and maybe the ball swings back to Klay. I don't know, but the point is, Klay's got to understand he cannot continue to shoot in the manner that he does throughout the entirety of this series, because it could end up hurting the Warriors, because he didn't have the greatest game one either. And now we're looking at going into enemy territory. It's going to be tough for him to get into a rhythm there as well. We all know game 6 Klay is a thing, but I mean, if that's the only game you're going to pop off on in this entire series, I would say that there's worry for Golden State. But again, like I said, the biggest thing was that Golden State played solid defense. They had their big third quarter, and they limited the supporting cast to very minimal points and contributions on Boston's side. So I was telling Kyle as the game was going on, or kind of towards the game as it was ending, um, you know, give Jason Tatum his points. You know, he's going to go after his 25 to 30. Let Jalen do what he's got to do. He's going to go after his 20 points a game also. But as long as you minimize everybody else's contributions, then I think that they'll be fine going forward. But overall, happy to see Golden State kind of get back into their rhythm. They look to gain some confidence, and we'll see how it is for game 3.
I mean, Kevin, I'm with you on this one 100%. I thought Golden State, they needed this one in a big way after giving up that game 1 loss, which I thought they were in pretty much in full control of, except for the fourth quarter where Boston just shot the lights out and Golden State couldn't respond. But I like the fact that Golden State, even though like this game was kind of back and forth in the first half, they made great halftime adjustments. And that third quarter is when this entire game just blew wide open for Golden State. So, up until third quarter, really Boston and Golden State were in like this defensive battle. I mean, down low, it was just a battle between the bigs from Boston and the bigs from Golden State. Because Kevon Looney, once again, was solid for Golden State. But if you look at Boston, they were getting solid contributions from Daniel Tice and Robert Williams. They blocked multiple shots in game 2. And that really kind of set the tone in the first half. Just both defenses with Boston and Golden State were just phenomenal. A lot of the shots early on were extremely contested, and points were very hard to come by. So a lot of the game, it was mostly trying to drive into the paint, possibly get to the free throw line, maybe try to get a layup. But really, you look at the first half and you go to the third quarter. The third quarter is where everything completely flipped, and it flipped in favor of Golden State. I mean, if you look at the box score, Golden State had a 35-14 quarter against Boston. I mean, you're talking about a 21-point differential in the third quarter alone. I mean, this is just Golden State's thing for some reason. They just make great halftime adjustments, and they absolutely dominate that quarter. It just essentially make the fourth quarter relatively pedestrian. And I look at the third quarter specifically, Steph was special. Steph was getting great pick and rolls at the top of the key, was able to knock down a couple 3-point shots. Jordan Poole at the end of the third quarter was just absolutely dynamite. Like I said earlier, him knocking down that 40-foot 3-pointer at the end of the third quarter, I mean, it really just kind of clinched the game at that point. Golden State was up 20 points to begin with at that point, and that just extended the lead even more so. And you combine that with the fact that Boston just could not buy a bucket in the third quarter, no matter who it was from. That really just went to show the testament and really the championship pedigree that Golden State has been able to maintain for the last 7 to 8 years. It really kind of showed in this game too. And then really to kick it over to Boston, Boston just did not get the contributions from some of the role players like they did in game 1. Al Horford was a beast in game 1, was able to knock down shots very consistently, but in game 2, dropped 2 points. We were talking about this a couple days ago. The one thing that Boston's going to have to get from him, specifically in reference to Al Horford, is he has to be more consistent, because there are games where he'll drop 20, 25 points and look like a god out there sometimes. And then he'll have nights like this where he goes out and scores 2 points. You can't have that if you're Boston moving forward. He's at least got to drop 10 to 15 consistently. And then you look at the rest of the roster. I mean, I'm looking at Derek White. Granted, he did knock down some pretty big shots early on for Boston, but only scored 12 points. Like Kevin said earlier, Marcus Smart with 2 points, Robert Williams with 2 points. I mean, these are difference makers for Boston. I mean, These guys are going to have to be extremely pivotal moving forward if Boston's going to win the NBA Finals this season. And with points performance like this, you're not going to be able to get that because Golden State made great defensive adjustments, and it really kind of showed because Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and Robert Williams, the fact that they combined for 6 points between the three of them, that's atrocious. Granted, I know Jason went out and did his thing, but Jason had a minus 36 in his plus minus, which is the worst in his career at this point in the regular season and in the playoffs. So, if you're looking at Boston right now, look, you stole one in Golden State on the road in game one. So it's 1-1. It's a pretty advantageous situation for the Celtics moving forward. They do have the next 2 home games. Could they possibly win both of them? Yeah, potentially. But Golden State definitely got the momentum back on their side. So it's going to be pivotal for both teams to try to either continue their play from game 2, specifically in reference to Golden State. And then Boston just has to be able to knock down more shots consistently. But they have to get better production from Robert Williams, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Al Horford. Like all these guys have to step up in a pretty big way if they're going to be successful back in Boston. But great performance from Golden State in game 2. And with the series at 1-1 apiece, this is going to be a fun series the way that I see it. Both teams are great defensively. Golden State really showed that in game 2. But we'll see what happens with game 3 because Boston, I think, is going to find a way to bounce back. And we'll see if Golden State can counteract that.
I think that if there is a focal point for Golden State to focus on to improve, Steph needs his partner. Steph needs his splash brother. Dude, like we said about Jason, he's not going to continue to have bad games. Steph is not going to continue to have these almost 30-point, if not 30-point games per game in the series. We need somebody to step up, whether it's Poole or whether it is Clay. And I know that Poole had 17, but he did have about 6 to 8 points in that fourth quarter to where Boston did not play their starters. So I'm not going to look too far deep into that 17 because that was relatively close to being garbage time points. But again, he hit the important shots when needed. He played good minutes. So I give him his flowers. But the point of what I'm trying to say is Steph cannot carry this team alone if Boston starts to hone in because others are going to have to make shots. Now, Steph is hitting the occasional step back 3, the 30-footers that he normally hits, the floaters in the lane where he's finishing at the rim, and then, of course, he's getting to the free throw line a couple of times a game as well. Clay's getting 19 shots. I need you to be better than 30%. I need you to be better than 22%. You know what I'm saying? I need Clay. I'm not asking for game 6 Clay every day. I'm not asking for him to shoot 50% from the field. But my man, if you're going to take 19 shots, I'm really going to need you to step up and play a lot better because you also had a 0, like a flat on the plus minus scale. What are you doing to better this team? You're playing okay defense at best, and we understand you're still recovering from the Achilles and the knee. But again, I can't continue to use that as an excuse because you came back in January. So it's, we're in June. It's been 6 months. You're fully acclimated. You've missed some. I don't even know. Has he missed any time since he's been back aside from maybe the occasional games for rest?
Not really.
Exactly. So it's like I can't sit here and say that they're limiting you and that they're keeping you off the floor. Granted, he played a shit ton more minutes than he needed to because Golden State, like I said, didn't need to play their starters in the fourth, and Clay played up until 3.5 minutes left in the fourth. Kyle made the point while we were watching the game, or while we were on the phone as the game was ending. That's Steve Kerr trying to make sure that he kind of gets into some kind of rhythm going into game 3. It made it worse. He didn't really make any shots outside of maybe like a floater, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a step back jumper. But the point of what I'm getting at is Golden State needs help. And Boston's not going to have a bad shooting night like they did tonight, every single game. It's like we said just about Jason. There are going to be adjustments. Boston is going to find a way to bounce back, and they're home. Steph needs help.
Well, here's how I kind of look at it. Because I think Golden State's in a situation where Clay is definitely, not on point so far. And, maybe it's to a certain extent that he's just not all the way back from that Achilles and ACL, which is understandable. Like, it takes a long time to be able to get back into rhythm after 2 significant injuries like that. So I understand like he's still cold right now. But they at least have Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins to fall back on. And I will say,
but Wiggins had a bad game too. 4-12. He couldn't hit. He
I
didn't get any shots either.
Kev, you have to look into the context. The first half, everybody was struggling. Everybody was.
It
The
was a good
only
defensive game, like you said.
like in the first half specifically, that really kind of set the tone for the entire game. Like just the defenses on both sides for both teams was solid. I mean, Boston was getting blocks early on whenever Golden State penetrated the paint. Freaking Draymond Green was playing outstanding defense against Jaylen Brown in certain possessions. Andrew Wiggins had great closeout defense. Like a lot of these shots that Boston's were taking early on, they were heavily contested. I know Andrew Wiggins only had 11 points, but his defensive contributions is something that I can't overlook because he was playing solid
Not at all.
closeout defense. And the thing is like points were definitely tough to come by. That's really going to be like the main thing that I look at from this game too specifically. It's just Golden State just blew them out in the third quarter. This game, to be quite honest with you, it kind of had like that old school late 2000s vibe where you weren't seeing a team put up 40 points in a quarter. You were seeing teams maybe put up 25, maybe around 30 points if you were lucky. Because that was just kind of like the style of what was played back in like the late 2000s. The 3-point shot hadn't really gotten to the point where it is now. But overall, I thought, guys like Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green in stretches, Jordan Poole, like Kevon Looney, like these guys I thought played very well for Golden State. Granted, like the point totals don't really indicate that because they're relatively pedestrian, but they knocked down timely shots when they needed it. Kevon Looney was able to get some decent rebounds at times to either save a possession, possibly get some second chance points. And I thought he was great on the defensive side. So, when it comes to Golden State, I understand Clay is definitely a major factor moving forward, but they do have pieces to supplement him at times. They have Andrew Wiggins, they have Jordan Poole. We'll see what happens with Gary Payton II because now they're reintegrating him back into the rotation after coming back from his elbow injury. So
Well, Andre
they
Iguodala also didn't play, and he played in game one. So that's also a big reason that, GP2 got his actual minutes back.
yeah. So Golden State's in a situation where if one guy is not necessarily having the best night in Clay's perspective, they have guys that are behind him that can pick up the slack. That's really one of the reasons why I picked Golden State in this situation over Boston was because I think they just have a deeper rotation to work with. Boston is kind of limited in that regard, but Boston can be able to make it work if they're just effective from the field. But before we go like to the next segment, I just got to ask you. This is just like something that like just kind of popped in my head. I mean, we're 2 games into the NBA Finals so far. Like, who do you have as the NBA Finals MVP leader right now?
I mean, I would probably say Steph Curry, 32 in game one, 29 tonight, shooting efficiently from the field, leading this team, making good reads and great passes. I mean, I know he's not averaging a triple-double or anything, but he's rebounding the basketball like he normally does. He's finding wide open players. He's getting himself into the, the defensive side. He had 3 steals today also, so it's not like he's just doing it all on the offensive side. Now, if Al Horford would have had himself a decent game, you could have made the argument for him as well because of how he came on in that fourth quarter and led that Boston team to the upset in game one. And if he would have had, like I said, just a decent game today, maybe the score would have been closer. Maybe he would have been in the running as well. But to me, it's clear cut and it's concise for me because Jason had such a bad game one. Jaylen had a good fourth quarter of game one, but again, he kind of had an inconsistent first half. So the only player that's been consistent and scoring at a good clip and of efficiency on both sides, it's Steph Curry.
Yeah, and it really is kind of cut and concise, like you said. Like it's to me, there's really no debate. I mean, as of right now, the guy's averaging around 32 points per game in the first 2 games. And he's shooting relatively well. Granted, I think he shot around 40, 45% in game 2. In
Yeah,
game
9
1,
of 21.
yeah, in game 1, he dropped 34 points. I mean, he was on fire early on in that game 1 where he just couldn't miss a 3-point shot. He got into
Yeah,
rhythm
I think
early
he had
on.
what 20. He had 21 in the first quarter.
He was cooking. It was somewhere around there.
Disgusting.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, it's cut and concise. We'll see how the series plays out. Obviously, when you look at the boss perspective, I can't keep Al Horford in that situation right now based on the fact that he dropped 2 points in game
2
2.
points.
2
Exactly.
points? No, like I can't have that. I mean, Jason, yeah, like it was like ew, like this is just gross. I mean, if I had to pick somebody from Boston, it would probably be Jason, just because he's producing. but in game one, he was inconsistent. He was
At best.
inconsistent in game one. Really, Al Horford stole the show in game one for them. And
.6.
Jalen Brown was able to knock down some timely shots in game one. And I mean, I'll tell you this. I mean, Jalen got off to a great start in game two. He dropped like 13 points early against Golden State in game two, and then got into foul trouble, and then they just couldn't get into rhythm. And that was just because Golden State clamped down defensively. But yeah, the only player that I could say honestly that's been playing the most consistent basketball in this series so far, it's Steph. And I know like that's our pick to, win finals MVP potentially. Granted he's off to a good start, but we'll see what happens when it goes back to Boston. This is where it's going to get interesting. Because
It's a whole different world out there in Boston, man.
yeah, and that game 3, Boston's going to be hopping. They're going to be ready for game 3. So, obviously we'll talk about, game 3 at a later time, but the series is just warming up. I picked the Warriors in 7. I hope it goes 7 just because, it'll be a more competitive game. But have you been like impressed by these 2 final games so far, or they've been just like relatively like blowouts?
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Have they
Like,
been exciting? Like, have they been exciting?
yes, because people have to understand it's not like previous series throughout this postseason where it's like it's a 30-point blowout in the third quarter. Nobody wants to watch the rest of it. You may claw back, you may not, but it's like this series in particular has been close pretty much until almost the very end. Obviously, game one went up into the fourth to where Boston went on a run. It
Yeah.
wasn't a blowout. Boston went on an absolute tear in the fourth. Golden State wasn't able to match it, and they turned the ball over. This game, Golden State had an incredible third quarter like they've had for the last 6 years. Boston wasn't able to catch up, and it turned into what it turned into. It's not, like I said, it's not like it's been just right off the gate, 25 points going into halftime. Like, no, these games have been competitive up until a certain point to where one team makes a run. And I think that basketball, shout out to AJ who's been on the show, he always says it. Basketball is a game of runs. It takes
Exactly.
literally 2 or 3 shots to go in, and you're on a 6-0 and 8-0 run, and before you know it, that turns into something massive for the team with a confidence boost. And Golden State's at home. Come on.
Yeah, I think even early in the third quarter, I think Golden State was up 12 points in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And I remember Boston knocked down 2 shots. They knocked down 2 3-point shots, excuse me, to cut the lead to 6 points. And I'm like, is this the run where Boston's gonna not only, cut the deficit to 0, but like actually take the lead? And then Golden State just absolutely annihilated them in the rest of the third quarter. I mean, Boston
Yeah,
really
I think
struggled to hit
Kerr
that.
I think Kerr called the timeout right after Derek White hit that wide open 3 in the corner. I know it's exactly what you're talking about.
They didn't call a timeout. I remember, I think it was Jason knocked down a 3-point shot. Steve Kerr got really pissed because he was basically saying like the defense had to like kind of like step up to actually like contest a shot. They were playing too far back. And then after that, they just went on a run where Boston just couldn't match it.
Yeah.
But there was a moment in that third quarter specifically where I thought Boston cuts the lead to 6 points. Hey, bro, it's a 2-possession game at that point. And the way that Boston was knocking down 3-point shots in the third and fourth quarter in game 1, I could totally see a scenario where they would replicate that in game 2. It's just Golden State said, nah, that's not happening. We're not going to let this happen 2 games in a row. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. They weren't letting that shit happen again. So
no shot.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're in for a good series here. I really do. So we'll see what happens in game 3 that takes place in a couple days. And we'll get back to this one later this week. Probably have another segment for an upload before game 3 takes place.
Yeah, game 3 is on Wednesday too, so it'll be a little conflicting. But Kyle and I will organize our schedule and make sure that we prioritize it as we always do.
Exactly. But with that said, we are going to transition to some pretty big news coming out of Utah with the Utah Jazz specifically. Quinn Synder, the head coach for the Utah Jazz, has resigned from his position. Despite the fact that Quinn Synder has been a solid coach for the Utah Jazz, has led the Jazz to multiple playoff appearances throughout his tenure, actually had the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Not this past year, but the year before. he is out of a job with the Jazz, and it really kind of focuses on Donovan Mitchell at this current moment in time. And there's been some reports circulating about how Donovan took the news of Quinn Snyder leaving Utah, and I think if I remember the report correctly, he was unnerved by the move of Quinn Snyder resigning from that head coaching position. And this is something that we've been talking about the last couple of days or so, about some rumors of Donovan Mitchell potentially leaving Utah to find greener pastures somewhere else in the NBA. So, Kevin, I'll just kick this one to you. With Quinn Snyder resigning from his head coaching position with the Jazz, where does this leave Donovan Mitchell in the near term future?
Can you say rebuild? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. There was already problems this offseason, right when they lost, about Donovan not being happy. Obviously, Rudy made the statement of you got to make the decision between me or Donovan. And now you're talking about your head coach, the coach that has made the playoffs 6 consecutive years, the coach that was a finalist to win Coach of the Year just last season, the coach that led you to the best record in the NBA last season. I mean, I really don't understand what more Snyder is supposed to do because he cannot get on the floor and make shots. Snyder cannot go out there and make buckets for players that are not executing. Kyle and I were literally talking about this before we started recording. He has a six man of the year in Jordan Clarkson, a superstar in Donovan Mitchell, a 3-time defensive player of the year in Rudy Gobert. He has plenty of shot makers off the bench with Bogdanovich and, like I said, Clarkson. But again, it's just a matter of people staying healthy. Mike Conley, since he got that massive extension, has not been available. Rudy Gobert has been on and off with injuries, but again, in the postseason, he's a liability because of his inability to make free throws and not being able to guard the perimeter. It just there's a number of different things, and I think Snyder kind of saw blood in the water, and he was like, you know what? I'm out. I'm not going to sit here and go through a rebuild. There are plenty of other opportunities that he feels maybe he can attain. Maybe he feels he can be better suited for another team. I don't know. I look at it and I say Utah was already kind of questionable this offseason with Donovan potentially wanting to leave. Now that he loses his head coach, I think there's no stopping this rebuild. I think that there is an awkward situation right now in Utah, especially with three players owed over $30 million each. Mike Conley's obviously owed his big contract. Donovan Mitchell signed his supermax just 2 seasons ago, and of course Rudy Gobert signed his supermax contract about 2 years ago as well. I mean, I think Donovan's due like 36 million. Rudy's due 41. If I'm not mistaken, Mike Conley's got to be upwards of 36 plus, also at the age of like I think 34, 35. It's getting absolutely insane that three people are going to be owed just $100 million between the two of them or between the three of them, and they have no cap. They have no luxury to go out there and sign other people. And I just think that all of these factors are just adding on to the speculation that Kyle and I already had. And I think that Utah's run has ended. And I think that Quinn Snyder kind of saw it. He was able to read between the lines and say, you know what, we had a good run. I think I'm gonna step down. I think it was wise on his part, and now it's just a matter of where the pieces fall, man. Does Mike Conley get traded to offload that big contract? Does Donovan Mitchell get sent to South Beach? Does Rudy Gobert go to Dallas? There is just so much spinning in Utah, and it's sad because you know what I'm saying. Like Quinn Snyder was a great coach. Donovan Mitchell was a great superstar. I thought that team was. It had a lot of potential, especially last year when they secured the number one seed in the Western Conference and in the NBA. I really thought that they were poised to make a run. They just can't get it done, man. They can't get out of the second round, and I don't know where Quinn's going to go, but wherever he does go, they're going to get a great coach because this team was not as good as people would have assumed when he took over, and making it to 6 straight playoffs. I think that speaks a lot of volume to the kind of character that Quinn had, and I know that Utah is going to be in a state of flux right now for the next couple of months, so we'll see where the dominoes fall. But yeah, no, it's unfortunate to see, but Kyle and I kind of saw this coming.
Yeah, and the way that I see it, I think the front office was probably had already come to a conclusion about Quinn Snyder's status, and I think maybe Quinn Snyder just looked at the situation. It's like, you know what, maybe it's better for me to just bow out instead of the Jazz just going out and saying, yeah, we're just gonna straight out fire him. It's unfortunate based on the fact that, like you said, the Jazz as a whole have had great success throughout the regular season. To be able to make the playoffs 6 times in a row in the Western Conference is no easy feat. So the fact that they were able to accomplish that, that's definitely something that Quinn Snyder could look back fondly. But just the amount of playoff ineptitude that this team has had has been so striking. The fact that they can't even make the Western Conference Finals with the roster that they have assembled, with Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, Jordan Clarkson, who's been sixth man of the year, Joe Ingles, Bogdanovich. I mean, they have a pretty
Well,
solid
Joe
group of
got
players.
traded. Don't forget, Joe got traded to Portland when he tore
Well,
his ACL.
I understand, but Joe was a part of that
Oh,
run
100%.
earlier.
Yeah.
Like they had like solid pieces to work with. It's just that, man, it's just they just can't get it together. And I think the way that I see it right now, I'm not gonna go as far to say that Donovan's like for sure leaving, but now I'm kind of getting closer where it's almost like 50-50 for me. So the way that I see it with Donovan Mitchell specifically is I have to see how Utah handles their head coaching search from here on out. Obviously, when you lose somebody like Quinn Snyder, who has been a solid coach for Utah the last couple seasons, when he's out the door, you have to fill that vacancy with somebody that is going to entice Donovan or at least incentivize him to stay for the long-term future. Because if Utah falls short in that manner, then I'm probably going to get to the point where Donovan's out of there. Like Donovan's just going to be sick and tired that the front office can't get it together. And I think with everything just coalescing over the last couple of years, the fact that they've never made it to a Western Conference Finals, they had the number one seed last year, they couldn't get out of the second round. Like this team has solid pieces to work with, yet they just can't find the the plays to make when they need to make them. Guys just don't have the production that they need to at the moment in time that they need to step up. It's just Utah just finds ways to fall short, despite the fact that they have one of the most dynamic players in the NBA, like Donovan Mitchell. And I do think that if Utah screws up this head coaching search and they hire somebody that is just not somebody that could really propel this team moving forward, I think Donovan's going to be out of there. But that's worst case scenario. If the Utah Jazz, hit a home run with a head coaching search, that would definitely, I think, entice Donovan Mitchell to stay, just to at least kind of play this out and see if Utah can, make it to the second round and possibly try to get to the second round. Because when I look at this past season, Utah was a solid team. I mean, they were middle of the pack in the Western Conference this year. It was obviously a step down from last year, but like Kevin said, there were some injuries on this team. Mike Conley was in and out of the lineup consistently with his lingering injury issues. But getting bounced out of the first round, that's a very tough pill to swallow if you're Utah, when you've just had multiple cases of just not getting to a Western Conference Finals, when you have the requisite pieces to actually make that happen. And I think, from here on out, Utah's going to have to be, I think they're skating on ice here. Like they're skating on real thin ice when it comes to Donovan's status. So I think all the pressure is on their front office to get this right with Quinn Snyder out of the head coaching spot for Utah. But, I'm getting close to like that 50-50 spot where Donovan could be out of there. That could potentially become 60-40, 70-30, 75-25, whatever the case, whatever sort of percentage you want to throw on it, if they hire a suboptimal coach in Donovan's mind. So this is going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. If they screw this up, I think their championship window does come to an end, because I think Donovan's going to be out of there. I think Rudy Gobert is going to be out of there. I think Jordan Clarkson's probably going to be out of there. Like he's going to try to facilitate a trade. I'm with Kevin on this one 100%, that Utah might just blow it up if the head coaching situation isn't addressed in a proper manner. But if it is, if they hire somebody that's universally liked in the locker room, then I think that, the waters will definitely be a little bit more settled. I don't think they'll be as troubled in that regard. So we'll kind of have to see how this plays out. But I will say, as of right now, Donovan's status with Utah is in a precarious situation. It's not at a point where it's gone past the point of no return, but it's it's really on the front office to get this one right. And there's a lot of pressure on them, and they really got to hit a home run with this next head coach they bring into the fold. Because if they don't, Donovan's out of there.
I mean, I'm just looking at it from a perspective, right? If we're waiting on the potential hiring of another head coach, right? It's just started June. The finals end in about a week and a half, pending if it goes to 7.
Yep.
Free agency doesn't start till July. you don't know necessarily what Utah's going to do right off the bat because we don't know what's going to happen with free agency. So it's like, do you hire a head coach for a system that may get blown up in free agency if they can acquire another piece or if they trade somebody else? I think there's too many question marks right now because obviously the coach is the one that decides the kind of play sets. Obviously, we know Donovan Mitchell runs this team and he's the focal point of the team. But if they were to go with a D'Antoni, which I believe actually just got hired, oh my God, I forget where I saw, man. I think D'Antoni was just got hired somewhere, but I
I could
can't
look up.
remember where.
I could look it up. I could look it up.
But you know, like I said, the example is different coaches have different systems, and if that system doesn't feel like it's, if Donovan doesn't feel like the system's going to work for him, he's going to want out. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that they wait for a coach. I think that Donovan looks and kind of reads between the lines, like I said, and says, there's not a lot of coaches out there that I would trust to kind of lead. I mean, Quinn Snyder has basically let Donovan do whatever he needed to do, and the Jazz have been successful. Like, what other coach can you say is going to be able to say, here are the keys to the kingdom, and the system that I'm going to run for everybody else is going to be as efficient as they have had? Were you able to find it?
Yeah. So he is currently a coaching advisor for the New Orleans Pelicans right now. But here's the
Okay.
thing: I don't think that they should go after D'Antoni.
No. I'm not saying to go. I was using it as an example.
Oh,
Like
okay,
if they were
okay,
to, like
okay.
we know that D'Antoni is a shooting offensive coach. I mean, for God's sakes, he literally shot himself out of a job in Houston just a few years ago. But I'm looking at available coaches. You're like, well, Billy Donovan, maybe Mike D'Antoni. Do they go after Mark Jackson despite his previous history in the league? You know what I'm saying? Like, who can you really go out there and sway to come out there and coach Utah when Dan Snyder couldn't win with the roster that they had? Again, I'm a firm believer in situations like this of kind of putting your coach in the situation of making a decision of, well, do I get fired or do I walk away on my own will of my own will? I can't blame a coach for people not hitting shots. Like at the end of the day, Bogdanovich missed that shot in game 6. That was a beautifully drawn up play. Is that Snyder's fault? No. Is it Snyder's fault that his defensive player of the year was unable to play the majority of the second half and most of that series against the Mavs? No. That's why I get mad when people are so willing to say X, let's fire the coach and start it over. Snyder's system worked. They were the best that they've been since the damn early 2000s with Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer. And now you have to start over with a brand new head coach. I don't know if Donovan's willing to take that gamble. I know sure as shit Rudy Gobert is probably off this team no matter what happens now because you're as a franchise, I'm not going to let go of the best player I've had since Darren Williams for a guy that's given me 13 and 13.
Yeah.
I love what you do to protect the rim. I love what you do as a defensive player of the year. But if it is a matter of Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, we have said this 100 times in the last 2 months. I am taking Donovan Mitchell. So now that there's a head coaching change, Rudy's going to be like, bro, I'm not dealing with this. You chose Donovan already. Get me the fuck out of here.
I think if Utah is smart, I think they try to go somebody who's younger. I think they try to go after somebody who is a little bit more vibrant in their coaching style. Just to kind of bring up the D'Antoni once, as I looked him up, bro, he's 71 years old. I
Holy
don't.
shit, is he really?
He's 71 years old. I don't think that that's the move. I think at that point it's more of like a. I think it's like a generational bridge that's like too far to gap. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like D'Antoni's had success in the NBA. Like I'm not going to criticize him on that aspect. I think it's just the relation to the players. I think it's just like that gap is too big. I mean, 71 years old. I mean,
Do you do
that's
Billy then?
that's up
Billy
there
hasn't been successful. That's what
potentially.
I'm saying. Like, what young guys are available other than like assistant coaches right now
But I mean,
on the bench?
but I mean, Billy's with Chicago.
No, I thought Billy got let go. I thought Billy wasn't the head coach in Chicago anymore. I saw a post that I think that they had somebody else.
No, he's still there.
Bro, what the? I read something that was like. Anyway,
No,
like I said, stupid.
no, he's still there. He's still the
Okay.
the coach of the Bulls. But no, it's trying to find these young guys right now. When it comes to the coaching spot, I mean, it's tricky. I mean, we're trying to like think like young as like NBA coaches or like somebody like in their 40s. Like a lot of these guys that we're saying that they're young, most of them are probably in their 50s. Billy
Yeah.
Donovan's like 57. He's 57.
But it's
But
hard to get a coach like a Steven Salas, a Jason Kidd, you know what I'm saying? Like those are younger coaches in the league that not everybody can say are as successful as they are. And excuse me, I have to take Salas away because Houston's been one of the worst teams in the league the last 2 years since he's been there.
yeah,
So, like you can't be like a Jason Kidd who has experience coaching two teams and being an assistant coach for a championship team in the Lakers. So it's like that's different.
I mean, when you look at the Lakers, they went with Darvin Ham. He's 48, so he's relatively young. I mean, He's only been removed from his playing career in the NBA for. I mean, it's been a while, but it's not like he's like been out of the league for like
30
25
years.
years. Yeah, it's not like that. He's been an assistant here and there. I think he was an assistant last for the Milwaukee Bucks, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So,
last season.
overall, I mean, the Lakers definitely went with a younger, more, I guess, like vibrant coach in that sense. But when it comes to Utah, Utah's gonna have to hone in on this head coaching search, and that's really, I think to me, that's where things are gonna get very interesting. Because if
Yeah.
Utah screws up on the head coaching search, then I think Donovan's out of there. So I think that's gonna be something that we're gonna have to focus on pretty intently moving forward because I think Utah's like championship window, is really at question here if they screw up the head coaching search.
Big time.
But with that said, we are going to transition into the NHL portion of the podcast. Kevin, I'm going to let you take this one.
Well, Kyle and I talked about this last week where the Eastern Conference Finals had started, and I made a bold prediction to say that the Rangers would lose in 5 or 6. Since then, the Rangers have won 2 out of the last 3, and they just lost today for the first game in Tampa in Game 3 to a beautiful pass. Can't even be upset. So specifically, Kyle, I'm just going to pose and ask this one to you. Is there trouble in Tampa Bay, and can the Rangers pull off a potential upset to go to the Stanley Cup?
I mean, so far, they've been the better team. The Rangers have played absolutely phenomenal in this series. Now, granted, the Rangers did drop game 3 to the Lightning, and the Lightning definitely needed to get that win in game 3 because had they dropped that one, I mean, to be down 3-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals, I mean, essentially, it's a wrap. There's only been a couple teams in NHL history that have come back from a 3-0 deficit, and I don't know if the Lightning would be one of those like magical teams to be able to come back from a 3-0 deficit. The Rangers have been solid this series. In games 1 and 2, the biggest thing that I could point to with the Rangers has just been their overall pace. Their pace has been phenomenal, and they've really punished Tampa in that regard because whenever Tampa makes a bad pass or turns the puck over, I mean, the entire team just hauls ass down the ice to try to get like an odd man advantage to get into good opportunity positions to get some good shots at net. And they've really honed in on some of the weaknesses when it comes to Tampa's defense specifically. When you look at Vasilevsky, I mean, Vasilevsky is one of the best goaltenders, if not the best goaltender in the NHL. And he's looked relatively pedestrian in this series so far. Against the Panthers, he gave up 3 goals in 4 games. In the 3 games against the Rangers so far, he's given up, if I remember the total right, he's given up 11 goals in 3 games. Now, granted, some of those were on him, but in large part, it's because the Rangers have been making good, timely passes and they're getting great shots and they're executing on them. And I have to say, in game 3 specifically, the Rangers were up 2-0. They were up 2-0 in this game. And they were up 2-1 going into the third period. And had it worked in their favor, they would have been up 3-0 in this series. But they just got absolutely destroyed by Tampa in that third period in game 3. You got to give Tampa a lot of credit for really showing some resolve in that third period because they could have just packed it in being down 2-1 and just, gave that game to the Rangers. But they really showed that the championship pedigree that they've shown the last 2 years in winning back-to-back Stanley Cups in that third period because I look at the goal that Steven Stamkos got at the beginning of the third period. I mean, just an absolute rocket shot in the top right-hand corner of the net. That tied the game at 2-2 piece. And then really, Tampa kept up the pressure the entire third period. New York would get like a couple chances here and there, but really Tampa dominated that third period. And then the last 40 seconds of the game, the Lightning had a situation where they were controlling the puck on the Rangers side. Forget who passed it to Kucherov. I believe it was Stamkos, but I might be getting the player wrong, so don't quote me on that. And then Kucherov had probably one of the best passes of the series so far. Just a nice little slip pass to Ondrej Palat, who was trailing behind him, and he was able to just rip it home. I mean, I have to say this: the Rangers goaltender was in position, and had he risen his pad like 2 or 3 inches higher, he probably saves that shot, and that game's going to overtime. And then God only knows what's going to happen in overtime. Tampa could have won it. New York could have won it. You never really know. But Ondrej Palat just absolutely ripped it home. And that was the difference maker that put the Lightning up 3-2 and really kind of saved them. Because when you look at the Lightning right now, the Lightning are in a very precarious situation. They are missing Braden Point, which is a huge factor. He's been one of the top playoff scorers, not just for Tampa specifically, but throughout the entire NHL the last couple of years. And I really do think that Tampa is missing his presence. It really just seems like Tampa, their chemistry is just off this series. They're giving up turnovers in bad positions. They're giving the Rangers way too much space to work with. Granted, I'm not going to blame this on the absence of Braden Point alone. There's been a lot of miscues from Victor Hedman, Nikita Kucherov, some of the role players on different lines. Tampa's really struggled in this series so far, and it's really because I think they've had a difficult time dealing with the Rangers just absolutely pressing the entire game. And the Rangers could do that because the Rangers are a relatively young team. But I think Tampa is finally getting up to speed. Those first 2 games, I think they were really hindered by the fact that they were off for over a week and a half, or at least a week and a half. I think it was 9 days, if I remember correctly. And I think they're finally kind of getting up to speed. It just took 2.5 games to finally get to this point. So I'm not going to say that, the Lightning are, they're done. They're completely out of it. I mean, they fought in game 3. They needed that one to get back into the series. But going into game 4, I think both these teams, both the Rangers and the Lightning, are looking at the situation where if New York wins game 4, they're going back home to the Garden up 3-1. That could potentially be a death nail situation for the Lightning. And then if you look at the Lightning have a very good opportunity to tie this series up at 2 apiece. And if they're able to do that, going back to game 5 in the Garden, you don't know what could happen. But, when it comes down to it, Tampa showed up in game 3 when they needed to. They fought back. They showed that championship pedigree that they've had the last 2 seasons. But when I look at this game 4 is going to be absolutely pivotal for both teams. It's a great opportunity for both of them. And I'll definitely be looking forward to it pretty intently.
I'm looking at this and I'm saying, like Kyle said, first 2 periods, New York dominated. You look at the third period, you give up 2 goals, one of them in the last minute, and you say, holy shit, this is the motivation that Tampa needed. Holy shit, this is the moment that you do not give a veteran team. You do not give the back-to-back defending champions at home on their ice. And that might settle, or that might not sit well with this young New York team, because this is all a veteran team like Tampa needs. Like Kyle said, they've had they almost had 2 weeks off. They may be settling into that groove. They literally ended the last period with a win. Going into the next game, this could lead to be a massive issue that New York might not be able to handle. Now, I understand that Kyle said that the change of pace has been something that Tampa's been struggling to get with, but now that the Lightning have their feet or their skates underneath them, this may be a series to where it starts to go, okay, you guys want to play fast? Might not be our style, but if we have to do this to show you guys that we mean business, to where we can regulate the game to our pace, keep the puck on our side. I mean, I caught the third period, which is of course the worst period to catch because I was out and about for the majority of the day, so I didn't really have an opportunity or chance to watch the first 2 periods. And I looked at the shots on goal. Tampa almost doubled the amount of shots on goal on New York. So it's not that the time of possession isn't something that is the issue here. It's a matter of New York capitalizing and making some tough shots. Now, if you can look at this and say, okay, if we can keep the pressure, New York will eventually fold. If we can limit the amount of time that New York has the puck, which they already have less time of possession in the last 2 games, and minimize the amount of makes that they have on goal, we can actually come back in this series relatively easily. And I'm not saying that New York, I'm not trying to be negative here. I'm not saying that New York can't win this series, but again, with a veteran team like Tampa, they just need to get a sliver of hope, just a little bit of oh, we could do this. And it's championship teams, man. We've seen them do it time and time again. I'm not saying that New York can't close the coffin. I'm not saying that this series is going to go 7. It's just a matter of I would have liked to see a little bit more fight in that third period from New York, a little less sloppy play. There were a couple of loose turnovers there in the last couple of minutes of the third period that I looked at it and say, oh, like that wasn't necessary. And again, since I'm not a hockey fan or a person that watches it as rigorously as maybe a Kyle or a couple of my other friends that I know watch the playoffs as intently as they do, I'm trying to just make sure that I'm paying attention and not trying to put too much thought into it. But I thought that there were some opportunities I thought New York let slip away, and a couple of untimely turnovers that gave Tampa a couple of shots on goal that put them in a situation to take the lead late in the third period. So I think it's going to be a good rest of the series. Curious to see how Game 4 goes. And, again, with this being legitimately the stage before the Stanley Cup, the way that it's going out there in the Western Conference, I truly believe that whoever comes out of the East is going to be hoisting up the Stanley Cup, because I think that the teams left are poised for adversity. And I think that they are kind of just ready to go on all cylinders, both on the defensive and the offensive end. And I think it's going to be an interesting closeout to this conference finals.
Yeah, and to be quite honest with you, to kind of focus on a point that you made with that the third period reference. I, I've watched all 3 of these games so far between the Lightning and the Rangers. The third period by the Lightning, that was the first period I actually thought that they won. Like, as far as like if you were like to compare the performances of both teams each period, I think the Rangers have dominated the first 3 games by a wide margin. I mean, you're talking about the Rangers like winning 8 out of the 9 periods within the first 3 games of the series. I mean, in that scenario, you would think that the Rangers would be up 3-0 in this situation. But the fact of the matter is that in that third period, I mean, to give up 2 goals when you're up 2-1 going into the third period, that's brutal. And the thing is, what the Rangers have done effectively to this point is all the shot attempts that the Lightning are getting, they're getting either blocked, goaltenders in the perfect spot to be able to make the save, and just the overall press that the Rangers are putting on the Lightning. It's putting them in a bind, and the Lightning are turning the puck over, and the Rangers are getting great situations to score. And really, the one point that I wanted to mention about the Rangers when we really look at this game 3, I mean, if Barclay Goodrow had just got that one shot off with, I think it was in the second period, the Lightning were on a power play, the Rangers get a steal, they get an odd man advantage, Goodrow gets a shot, and it hits the post. If Goodrow hits that shot just a little bit more to the left, it's a goal. I mean, at that point, you're up 1-0. At that point, you combine that with the fact that the Rangers had 2 power play goals in the second period, that could have potentially put them up 3-0. A 3-0 deficit is a lot more difficult than coming back from 2-0, especially when the other team's on their home ice. To me, I think the Lightning really made a great play to get back into it. It was a power play goal by Kucherov that got that deficit to 2-1. And then, like you said, just Tampa was just hellacious in that third period by getting just constant pressure the entire period. They were tying it up in the third. It was just a rocket shot. And then Palat just nailed it home at the end of the game. Because I remember I was watching the game with my brother. And the one thing that we were saying kind of back and forth to each other was, man, Tampa's getting good looks here, but they're just not capitalizing. I'm like, yeah, this game might be going to OT, bro. But I got to give the Lightning credit. They showed up and they made some great plays when they needed to be able to survive a game 3. Because that's the best way that I could describe it. They did kind of survive game 3 because New York was like this close to possibly winning that game, and the fact that the Rangers were like this close to winning game 3, it really kind of indicates how good they're actually been playing, like how hot they've been. They've been playing phenomenal hockey, and man, if it goes south of the Rangers here, they're gonna look back at this game. It's like, we had this one.
100%.
Like that's something that, obviously we had to see how the series plays out. The Rangers could go out in game 4 and absolutely dominate the Lightning, and then going back home for game 5 could potentially be over for the Lightning. But this one's gonna sting if you're a Rangers fan, because this is a game that could have had. Being up 2-1 on the road in the third period, that's an advantageous situation.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one to come back from, 100%. And again, I'm not a massive hockey fan, but knowing and checking on the score religiously, seeing that it was 2-0, and then seeing that, that third period kind of fall apart, you were looking at it like, oh shit, here they come. And That's exactly what happened. And again, dude, I'm watching this game and I text Kyle immediately. I said, bro, I can't even be mad. That was a flawless pass to go up 3-2.
Dude, the little slip pass to catch Palat, it was like poetry in motion, bro. It was a perfect setup. And it was
smooth hockey like that is what makes me like, man, maybe I could get into hockey, because that was like so like I said, smooth, bro. Oof.
And the thing is, I remember I was talking about this with my brother. On that play, the Rangers player that was basically covering Kucherov before he made that pass back, his name was Zibanejad. Bro, Zibanejad was like literally like going in a circle. Like, bro, he was lost. Like, bro, you got to give him a map, because like he had no idea where the puck was. And I mean, Kucherov, like, he's subtle with those passes. Like he's either hit or miss with some of these passes, because sometimes he'll make just terrible passes that lead to turnovers and good scoring opportunities for the other team. But then you get passes like that, where it's a perfect slip pass to Palat, who's literally in rhythm to take the shot. And I gotta give a lot of credit to the goaltender for the Rangers. I believe his name is Sherstekin, I think, if I'm getting his name right. His name is Igor.
It's pronunciation. It's just
Shesterkin. It's Shesterkin. That's the guy's name. He was in position. It hit his pad. I mean, that's how like close you're threading the needle on some of these shots, dude. Like, it was that close. He had 48 saves. I mean, the Lightning had 51 shot attempts.
Nuts, bro. That is not okay.
48 saves. I mean, the Lightning really kind of gave it to the Rangers on shot attempts. And the fact that the Rangers lost this game by 1 goal with 40 seconds to go, it depends on how you look at it. You could look at it from the Rangers like, yeah, drop that one, but it's like we could get this back. Or it's like, damn, we let that one slip. But it's like, are we gonna let that like continue? Like, are we like gonna be like bothered by that moving forward? We'll kind of see how it goes. But I think the Lightning have finally kind of caught up to the Rangers' pace. I think it finally, it got to this point where they could actually, go toe to toe with them. But if the Lightning win game 4,
momentum shift completely.
The series flips entirely. But if the Rangers win game 4, it's over. It's over.
I'm not going to say it's over, because we've seen the Rangers themselves have been the ones to come from 2-3-1 deficits. I will not. Dude, hockey's that one sport.
It was one. It was 1-3-1.
2.
No, it was
2.
It was 1.
It was 2. Dude, we were down 3-1 against the Penguins.
You were, but you were not 3-1 down against the Hurricanes. You were down 2. It was 2-1. You can look it up.
Because, dude, I saw this. We're the second team. We're the fourth team in NHL history to come back from 2-3-1 deficits in a postseason.
You want me to look it up?
Yeah, look it up, bro. Okay. I literally saw the statistic.
Game 1. This is the Carolina series. Carolina was up 1-0. They went up 2-0, and then you guys won back-to-back games in the Garden.
So what was that statistic I saw with the fourth team? Maybe we were the fourth team to come back from a 2-1. I don't know. I've been having an off night tonight. I don't remember shit anymore.
There was a stat that came out, I think, a couple like weeks ago, saying that the Rangers were the first team to come back from a 3-1 deficit, and they were down like multiple goals. I think like that was like one of the,
maybe that's the one.
Yeah, I think that was the one stat that they used. But some of these stats get so crazy, bro. Like they get like so like intricate, like so detailed.
Yeah.
You have to kind of like really like dive into it. I'm like, The fact of the matter is the Rangers won the series against the Hurricanes.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. And, guys, I'm getting old. I'm forgetting shit. I used to be so on point back in the day.
Bro, they came back from a 2-0 deficit. I mean, you got to give them credit on that. So the Rangers weren't really even like supposed to get this far. This was kind of a team in a rebuild anyway. So the fact that they've gotten this far is really a testament to their character. And the fact that these young guys are playing so well, so good, that's going to bode well for them in the long term. So I think the Rangers are going to be here for a while, bro. So don't sleep on this team moving forward. But game four is about to get.
It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, that one takes place on Tuesday. So
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday at 8. So that'll definitely be a fun one. And then game 5 takes place on Thursday back in the Garden. So I think it's fun, bro. So we'll see how it goes down. So with that said, we're going to transition to our last segment of the episode. Talk a little bit of baseball. And we're going to specifically focus. I know it's getting late because I'm struggling to say words at this point.
Gonna be fine.
We're going to talk a little bit about the Angels. So the Angels have been in a really tough stretch of late. So just to kind of put things into perspective, just a couple weeks ago, the Angels were 27-17. And when you look at what the Angels have done recently, they have lost a tremendous amount of games the last 2.5 weeks. They have been
11 straight.
They've been swept in 3 straight series. And they have, like Kevin said, lost 11 straight games. This is an atrocious stretch that the Angels have been on. And granted, it is June, so it is still relatively early in the baseball season and in the MLB. But Kevin, I got to kick this one to you. Do you think the Angels are in legitimate trouble in this 11-game losing streak that they've been having?
I don't think it's a good sign for the amount of money that they've spent in the last couple of years. I mean, Trout's been hurt. You obviously have Ohtani, pulling in basically 2 jobs as a pitcher, and obviously, MVP season that he had last year at the plate. You have Rendon that you made that trade for, should I say. You signed in free agency from the Nationals after they won the World Series 2 years ago. You go and you sign Noah Syndergaard this offseason to kind of solidify that number 2 pitcher behind Ohtani. John Madden, no, rest in peace. Joe Madden at the managerial spot. You kind of try to bring some championship pedigree in terms of leadership in the dugout, and it's just not boding well. Mike Trout's not hitting very well. The pitching staff is just not playing very well. I mean, you look at the scores of the last 11 games. I'm going to read from today's game all the way to their last victory. So against the Phillies, 9-7 loss. Phillies again, because it's a 3-game series, 7-2. Phillies again, 10-0. The Yankees, they played a 3-game series. Supposed to be 4, but 1 game was postponed. They lost. This was the closest game in this entire losing streak. 2-1. They only allowed 2 runs. They lose to the Yankees 6-1, 9-1. Then they play the Blue Jays. They gave up 11 runs. Granted, it was 11-10, but again, that's still 11 runs. It's not a good showing from their pitching staff. They lose 6-5. They lose 4-3, 6-3, 7-2. There was only 1 game in this 11-game stretch where they did not score more than 2 runs. And that was that game against the Yankees. How are you supposed to win games when your pitching staff's ERA is absolutely atrocious? What are you supposed to do when you're giving up more than 4 runs per game every single game during the streak? Your best player is in an absolute slump, if I've ever heard of one. And you're going and you're looking at this and you're saying, dude, we're not just losing. We're not scoring. Outside of today's Phillies game, like I said, they scored 2 runs, 0, 1, 1, 1. Your pitching staff sucks and you're not hitting consistently. It's not a successful formula. And like Kyle said, it's June. I'm not going to go out here and say that they're not going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying that they're not going to win the World Series. We've seen teams turn around drastically in the months of August and September. So I'm just looking at this and I'm saying it's not a good look. It's definitely not something that you want when your team is finally healthy, especially when you get your best player, arguably the best player in baseball, and Mike Trout back. And I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on in LA for them to fall this fast and this hard. But if they don't get their act together, they're going to quickly fall behind in a very competitive American League. And I think that they need to kind of get this together and right this wrong. because you can't just put all this pressure on Mike Trout. You signed Anthony Rendon. You have plenty of other players on this roster that are going to be able to kind of contribute. And again, I'm not asking for a 275 batting average, 20 home runs, and 80 RBIs from every single individual. But again, when you pay the money that you have for the players that they have on this team, you would expect a better result and a better record this point in June. I know I say a lot about the Yankees, but we have found a way to do what we need to do and have the best record in baseball up to this point. And this is the difference between the two teams, because at the point that Kyle was talking about when we were talking about baseball, the Yankees and Angels were tied for the best record. It literally has gone in an opposite direction to where the Angels have plummeted in the American League and the Yankees have absolutely ascended to great feats. So you can tell that just 2-3 weeks in the MLB can mean an absolute difference of a incredible season and a oh shit, here we go again kind of season. So I say that the Angels got to get their act together, or this is going to be one of those seasons where you look at everybody and say, do we blow this up because this shit is not working?
I mean, Kev, when I look specifically at their pitching staff has been absolutely atrocious. I mean, like you said, to be giving up on average like 5 to 6 runs per game, you can't have that. Granted, if you're only giving up like 2 to 3 and the bats aren't there, that's one thing. Then you just kind of specifically focus on the hitting. But yeah, when your pitching staff is struggling this bad, winning games is just tough. I mean, it's not easy. Granted, I mean, they have great hitters like Mike Trout and Ohtani, but when they're not producing, it just makes it makes it that much more difficult to be able to go out there and win baseball games. I mean, Kev, just to kind of focus on Mike Trout specifically, Trout hasn't gotten a hit since May 29th. That was over a week ago. So at that time, his last hit, he had a 3-hit game against the Blue Jays on May 28th. His batting average was 320 at the time. That batting average has now dipped to 274. So he's almost lost a half point in his batting average in just a week. He has been struggling that bad. He struck out, if I get this correct, he has struck out like 8 or 9 times in like the last like 6 to 7 games that they've lost. And this is Mike Trout. This is one of the best players, if not the best player in baseball, and he's struggling this bad. It just kind of goes to show like where the Angels are right now. I mean, for God's sakes, they were 27-17 like just 2 weeks ago. They were basically at the top of the AL West and one of the more exciting teams in the AL this season. But to see them just completely fall apart in this stretch that they've been on, it's been absolutely horrendous. Now, I will say this. It's June. This is not a situation where they're going on this 11-game skid at the end of August going into September when they really need to ramp it up to try to make the playoffs. So this is a situation where I think the Angels can bounce back from. But first of all, their pitching staff needs to get it together. They need to start dropping that ERA closer to 3 if they're going to have any chance to win any sort of games in a competitive fashion moving forward. And the bat's got to show up. Mike Trout's got to be better. Ohtani's got to be better. There's a boatload of reasons why the Angels have been struggling, but by and large, it's the pitching primarily. The pitching has to be improved because there have been some games where the bats have been there. The Angels have scored multiple runs. Like they put up over 10 runs in some of these games, or they at least put up 10 runs or close to it. But when you get swept in 3 straight series, that's horrendous. That might be something like you see from like the Reds. That might be something that you see from the Royals, not from the Angels. So it's bad right now. I'm not going to say like this is like the season's over. They got to blow this thing up and they got to start from scratch. No. It's still early. They can recover from this. But we'll see what happens. They got to find a spark from somewhere because right now they're in a very precarious situation. I mean, be under 500 when they were over 500 by at least 10 games or so, not too long ago, that's very self-defeating. So hopefully they find some sort of stretch where they can win some easy games, kind of get back on track and kind of forget about the last 2 weeks because the last 2 weeks have been just utterly atrocious. But we'll see. It's still relatively early. I'm not going to say the season's over for them. They have plenty of time to make this up. But Yeah, this is a pretty bad stretch for them. Hopefully they can get it back together.
Yeah, we still got a long ways to go with baseball, man. It's absolutely insane to think that there's 162 games in a season, and we're sitting here talking about the NBA with 82, and then potentially lessening the season. We're talking about football with now 17 games. It's crazy to know that this damn sport legitimately lasts like 8 months of the year.
It's a
It's
it's a
great.
it's a marathon, bro. It's a
It's
marathon.
great.
So, I mean, baseball's gonna be basically front and center. Once the NBA Finals and the NHL playoffs come to an end. So I know the Stanley Cup's gonna basically end around the middle to end of June. The NBA Finals will wrap up within the next week or so. So, baseball's hey, we're heading into the dog days of summer at this point. So baseball's gonna be front and center before a training camp for the NFL starts ramping up at the end of July. So, but I know you got to be happy with how the Yankees are playing right now. I know we don't have a segment for them, but they've been on an absolute tear, bro.
Yeah, I think we're on another 6 game win streak right now. Boston's playing like shit, so that's phenomenal. But again, it's June. I'll get excited when we get closer to end of July, beginning of August, when it's actually meaningful baseball. Because obviously this season goes well into October. So yeah, no, I mean Aaron Judge is on a tear. Obviously, our pitching staff is absolutely just killing it, dicing it up. I believe Nestor is 5-1, Cole is 5-1. Sevy is, I think, 4-2. Like it's just we're doing everything that we can, and it's really nice to watch us be as successful as we are with the roster that we have currently assimilated, and I can't really complain. Again, I am just happy to see us be consistent at best. I am excited to say that Kyle and I are going to be at a game within 2 weeks from now. So to see my boys live for the first time in 3 years is going to be quite the feat, and it'll be against the Rays, so a division rival nonetheless. So maybe we'll go live from Tampa. Maybe we'll go live from Tropicana. I wish we could. I wish that was actually possible, but we'll see what
Wouldn't that
happens.
wouldn't that be fun? Getting
That'd
to
be dope.
haul of our shit down there. That'd be fun.
Just sit there and just plop the damn phone and just like put like a divider in between us with just like headsets and just a random microphone.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a good game. I mean, the Rays are. I mean, they're sitting at a 31-23 record. Granted, it's still early. I mean, like that's a respectable record.
Agreed.
So, but just, bro, I mean, the Yankees are 39-15. They have the best record in baseball by I think like 3.5 games. I know you're still very. I don't want to say pessimistic about like the rest of the season, but you're definitely tempered in your approach when it comes to the Yankees so far. But I know that you're like over the moon about the start that they've had, just specifically
Yes.
about the start that they've had. Did you even
Yes.
expect that this was gonna happen, or was this
No,
like
we
complete?
talked about this. We talked about this. I thought it was going to be a middle of the pack team. I thought it was literally going to be like third or fourth place in the American League East. I mean, let alone freaking best record in the sport. Like, no Yankee fan in the world saw this coming. And if you did, you're lying because the roster that we have with the money that we're paying out to certain players, it's not like it again, it's an unprecedented run right now that I cannot simply put into words. I've said it 1,000 times. I am happy with where we are. I don't want to settle. I don't want to get comfortable. But we talked about this last season. Dude, Boston went on the same run at some point in the year. And I think it was closer to the beginning and then to the All Star break, and then they carried through. And then the Yankees went on a run at the end of the year to flip and fight for first place. Granted, we ended up losing to Boston in the first round of the playoffs. But what I'm saying is there's always a team that starts off red hot. They go into the All Star break. They kind of go back and forth, and not necessarily a slump, but they kind of go kind of like win, loss, win, win, loss, loss. And then they kind of hit a slump in the most important portions of the season. So as good and important as a fast start is, like we have right now, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket and say that this is going to lead us to a World Series because we have to win baseball games at the most important parts of the year. And like I said, that's going to be late July, throughout the month of August, and of course, the most important games are going to be closing the season out in September.
Well, when was the last time that you see the Yankees on a run like this though? Like where like I think they're like what like 32 and like 9 or 32 and 7 in like their last like 40 some games.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know within a certain stretch. I can't remember and put to mind the last time we've actually won a chunk of games like this. But again, last year we went on like a 12 game, 13 game win streak to close out the year, or like, to like close the gap with Boston leading by, I think, 12 and a half games at one point. And, we did what we needed to do at important times. But in terms of like in a time frame of wins, I can't remember the last time we've been this successful in quite some time, if not ever, at
And
least
with
in my lifetime.
all the pieces that they acquired, either through the offseason additions that they had or some of the in-season acquisitions that they had, it's all worked out so far. Which I know you were kind of skeptical. You were kind of skeptical about maybe the Josh Donaldson signing. I know
Still am. He's
I,
inconsistent.
I know the Gallo one is one that just kind of just absolutely pisses you off, even though he did hit a moonshot.
He hit a bomb today.
Yeah, so that was an absolute rocket shot to right field. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Andujar. He requested a trade.
He requested a trade today, but hey, we picked up Matt Carpenter off waivers, and he's actually been doing incredible in this 6 game stretch at home. I think he has like 2 or 3 home runs in 6 games. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, he hit a bomb shot against the Tigers in that game where they won like 13-0, where everybody was getting a home run.
Nuts.
Judge is off to an MVP start. Like, guy has 21
21 home runs.
Think he's
Stanton's
coming back
off the IL, so we'll see what happens and see if Big G can get in a rhythm again. I call him Falafel because I can never remember his damn name. He's playing actually pretty solid baseball. And then, the catcher that we acquired from the Twins is actually playing solid. Names this season they've eluded me. And I see them on the highlight and I know who they are. I know their numbers, but it's like, dude, right now, I don't give a shit who you are. We are playing that good. We have a rotation of just players that are stepping up with injuries or whatever, and we're doing what we need to do.
And as good as the bats have been, the pitching's been there.
Pitching's been even better.
I mean, the last couple starts, I mean, the guys have been just absolutely phenomenal.
Locking it down, bro.
I mean, granted, I mean, they were playing against the Tigers in that home stretch, but I mean, Cole was dealing, Cortez was dealing.
Oh, Tejon is 6-1. Also 6-1. Yeah, I think he's 6-1. I think for the first time in Yankees history, there were back-to-back perfect games going longer than 6 innings for the first time since like 1940 something.
It was Cole and Tejon, right?
Cole and Tejon, yep. Cole had one going through
7
up into the 8th. Yeah, up until the 8th. He had 7 perfect innings, and then it got blown up in the 8th. And then I think Tejon got his blown up in the 7th.
And then Severino had a masterpiece the other day. I think he only gave up like 1 earned.
Yeah, 1 earned in 7 innings with 10 Ks.
Bro.
Dealing, bro. And Nestor's out here just doing something I would have never expected him to do, but I'm not complaining. Monty's playing solid. Not crazy, but solid.
Bro, once they start breaking out the bucket hats and the chains, they're feeling themselves, right?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, again, I'm not being pessimistic or negative for the team's success. It's just because, like we just alluded, 162 games, dude. Like, a slump is coming.
There's going to be a tail off. There will be.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Even if they were to win, like, 60% of their games, 65% of their games from here on out, I mean, that's still a success story that you could roll.
I want us to win 100 games. I mean, that's the minimum of a successful season. Granted, winning the division could be considered successful, 95 games, but I want to be greedy. I want 3 digits. I want 3-digit wins.
Granted, I mean, we'll see how the season, unfolds. There's still a lot of time left. I'm looking at the standings right now. You guys are 7.5 up against the Blue Jays and 8 up against the Rays. I'll throw the Red Sox in for good measure. You guys are up 12 against them. So don't even worry about the Orioles. The Orioles are 17 back.
I'm not worried about them. But for whatever reason, sometimes we struggle against them out of left field. So I'll never know what it is. They are like the worst team in the league, if not one of the worst teams in the league. And for whatever reason, they always give us a run for their money. I don't get it. Hey,
sometimes you slack off. Sometimes you get beat. It happens.
It's like the Patriots and the Dolphins, like for the last 20 years. They were like that one team that you're like, bro, the Dolphins, really? You know what I'm saying?
But the Dolphins know them. The Dolphins play them twice a year. So it happens.
Yeah, no, divisional opponents are always tough ones. I get that. It just makes you laugh when you look at it and you say, well, the Patriots went 13-3 this year, and 2 of those losses came from the Miami Dolphins, who are picking 3rd in the NFL draft. Like, you're like, bro, what the fuck?
Yeah, like I remembered, oh God, like Remember, this is a terrible example to bring up. I hate to bring up your team in this example. Remember when the Jags were playing the Patriots at the end of the season, this past season? The Jags
And they
gave them
blew them out by
it was
40 something.
yeah, it was like 50 to like 16. Like we were absolutely cooking against the Jags. Then I think the Jags played you guys the next week.
Yeah, right after. Yep, and we lost by I think 20, some shit like that. I don't even remember. It doesn't even matter.
I just that's how it goes though. Like
Divisional opponents, just they
they
get prepared, bro.
they, they know you best. You play each other twice a year, so it happens. So it doesn't surprise me that the Orioles beat the Yankees every now and then.
Yeah.
So
But, you need a bad game here and again to remind you, like, okay, like,
it's
they're not good and we are losing.
it's a good reset,
Yeah.
especially when you lose to an inferior team. It kind of gets
Heat
you
check.
back. It gets you back into place.
100%.
But with that said, bro, I think we knocked everything out. I think we're good to go.
Yeah, I think it's about time to go to bed.
Yeah, I feel that, bro. But no, I'm just once again just just to kind of wrap this up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Whether you guys were watching us on YouTube or listening to us on the audio platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we definitely appreciate you tuning in. Just to kind of give you guys an outlook for the rest of the week, we'll try to record a segment for Game 3 of the NBA Finals. We'll try to give a preview and a prediction for that game. We may do something with the Lightning and the Rangers. Just not sure. We'll try to see if we can work that out. But we'll just kind of have to make that with the schedules. We'll upload another episode at the end of the week, like we typically do. And yeah, that's pretty much all that I got from here. Just once again, thank you guys for tuning in. And Kevin, I'll let you take this one out from here.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we appreciate the support. Wouldn't be here without you guys. Like Kyle said, just because of scheduling, we'll figure out what we're doing between segments and episodes. I mean, TikTok's been doing great, Twitter's been doing great, kind of like just growing exponentially. On both sides, relatively simple. So I'll take what we can get, and obviously, we appreciate what we can get when we get it and where we do, no matter where the support comes from. But again, without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this. So with the postseason being here in two sports and obviously a big championship coming up and then one being currently active, we have plenty of content to talk about. But like Kyle said, expect a little bit of a dip off in terms of content. We're going to be fishing with some MLB stuff, NBA free agency, and just a whole bunch of stuff coming up that we're going to try to make sure that we just focus on a little bit more, even if we put out a little bit more on some shorter segments, maybe some shorter episodes. But again, we're going to make sure we do what we can to just keep you guys entertained and just make sure that we're giving you guys the best content we can moving forward. So without further ado, you guys have an incredible start to your week, and we'll be seeing you guys soon.
Yep. See you guys later.